Hello guys, today we are going to talk about CSS fundamentals. We all know that CSS is what is used to design and lay out our web pages, but how it does that, let's take a look at that today. So we are going to talk about a very fundamental topic in CSS, which is known as CSS selectors. Okay, so let's begin with it. I have made a demo project. Let me show you. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll remove all the previous applied stylings from the projects. And now let's take a look. So yeah, this is our the raw project that we'll be working on using selectors. So the first and the very basic and common type of selector is the ID selector. Okay. So what ID selectors is in CSS? I have an element, para element, which contains an inner text called ID base selector. Okay. And what I have done is I have given an ID to this para element using an ID keyword, and I have given and the name of it I have given as ID selectors. So this name of the selector is not restricted and is not a keyword. You can give any name according to your choice, but it should be relevant to whatever task or that in the text you are filling up with the element. Okay, so using this ID selector, now we have specified an ID selector to this para element. Let's take a look at how we can style this particular para element using the ID selector. So to use an ID selector, we use hash and then the name of our ID selector, which is ID selector. Okay, because that is the name of our ID selector, because that is what we have mentioned right here. Selectors. Okay, I'll make it selector. So inside this, I'll give some basic styling such as a border of solid to pixel and black. And now let's go to a project. Yeah, so that's the style we just applied on the IDB selector element, para element. It has been applied on this element. Okay, let's apply some more basic styling such as a margin of 20 pixel from all four sides and a padding of 20 pixel from all four sides. Okay, so yeah, all the styling that we applied on the para element using the ITB selector has been applied. Okay, so that's the rule of using the IDB selector. We access the selector using a hash. The next type of the selector that we are going to see is a class-based selector. Okay, so the class-based selector, the way we can use a class-based selector is we write a key, it's a keyword in which is known as class, and then the value of the class selector, which I'll type as class selector. Again, it's not restricted to the naming. The value of the selectors you can give according to your choice. You can also give like a text. Okay. Yeah, I'll keep it to class selector. And now to use a class selector, we use a dot, and then the name of the class selector, which is class selector. And then I'll apply a different style to this as well, solid of 2 pixel, and then I'll apply it blue. Yeah, again, I'll also apply these two particular style to this element as well. Okay, so that is what a class selector is. We to access a class selector, we use the class keyword, and then in the style sheet we use dot and then the name of the class selector, which we have mentioned over here. Okay, yeah, so the next type of selector that we are going to take a look is element selectors. So what element selectors are? There are some as you can see in my HTML document, all the elements are para based elements, right? So if I have to apply a specific piece of style on all the para elements, okay, let's suppose a font size of 24 pixel on all the para elements. Yeah, so what will happen is it will apply this particular styling of 24 pixel on all the para elements of my HTML document. Yeah, so let's take a look. Yeah, if we go to the inspect mode and inspect any one of the element, because all of them are para, so they're going to give the same results for all the elements. So yeah, the font size is 24 pixel. If you are going to take inspect this particular, yeah, it's the same for all the elements. Okay, now an interesting thing I'll show you. I'll apply a border of solid 2 pixel and red, and also some margin and padding. Okay, so what happened, like why the last two para elements got a border red and the first two elements did not? The reason for that is when we are using this para based element selectors, all the elements got applied with this particular styling. Okay, but when these two elements were shown in the HTML document, the those stylings were overwritten by its own inline style, which is the ID based style and the class based style. So if I show you in the inspect mode, let's take a look and inspect the first element, you can see that, yeah, the border, margin and padding, all these three styles were overridden. As you can see a strike through all the styles, they were overridden by the ID selectors. Okay, and if I remove one of the style, let's say this border, from the ID based selector, the default styling of the para selector will be applied on that element. Same goes for the other styles as well. Okay, so this is one advantage of using an element based selector. It applies a particular set of styling on all the elements of the web page, but there are some disadvantages of also of using this selector. That, let's suppose we want to specify style only a certain elements with these styles. Okay, and let's suppose uh, these styles are not applied on the first element, right? So what will happen is this para element also gets configured with the style that we have mentioned in our para element. Okay, so that is one advantage of using element selectors, that it applies the same set of styling on all the elements of a web page, all the elements that we specify in the element based selector. Okay, so I'll uncomment this. Yeah, the next, I think it didn't. Yeah, so the next type of selector that we are going to take a look is group selectors. Let's take a look what is a group selector. Let's suppose we add some more elements in our document. Let's an H1 with the heading 1, and then an H2 which says heading 2. So how can we group these two headings to apply a single style on them? We can do that using comma separators. Using comma, we can separate multiple elements on which we have to apply a particular set of styling. Let's suppose, and I'll give them a background color of brown. It's too dark. Let me give a light color to it. Light blue. Yeah. So if you can see, both the headings have been applied with this particular set of styling. And how we did it? We did it using a comma separator. Okay, so that is what is known as group selector. Even if I let's suppose I add one more element called h3, I can group as many elements as I want. Heading 3, and I can add one more element comma h3. And if I take a look at the project now, the third element has also been grouped together in the same styling. Okay, so that is what a group selector is. Now let's take a look at a pseudo selector. What is a pseudo selector? So this element right here, in which the inner text is pseudo selector, I have applied a class whose name is pseudo selector. Okay, so I'll access this element right here using pseudo selector. Okay, and by default I'll give it a background color of light blue. Okay, let's take a look how it does look. Okay, it is because this para element is overriding. Background color of okay, let's take a look why it's not getting applied. Pseudo selector, background color. Yeah, now there was a spelling mistake. So yeah, so as you can see, or let me just change this color to wheat. Yeah, as you can see, the background color of this element has been changed using the class-based selector. Okay, now what pseudo selector is? Pseudo selector are the type of effects that we can introduce. Let's suppose an hover effect. If we introduce an hover effect, if we points our mouse cursor on that element, what effect that we want in a particular styling. We want the background color to change from wheat to, let's suppose, tan. Okay, so see, if I'm hovering over this element, the background color is being changed from what it previously was to what it currently is. I can also add one more hover effect such as cursor pointer. So if I hover on this element, what I can see is that the cursor has been converted into a pointer. So that is what a pseudo selector is. Pseudo selector is the effects that we can apply on the elements of our web page. And the last and the most you can say rarely used selector is a universal selector. Universal selector is something that we can apply using a star and then the curly braces. And so a universal selector is used when let's say we have to apply a particular set of styling on on the entire web page or all the elements of a web page. Yeah, so if I have to give a font size of 32 pixel to all the elements of my web page, so let's take a look now. Yeah, it's not getting. Let me give some other styling. Yeah, I'll give a width of 50%. Okay, so as you see, the width of all the elements have been reduced to 50%. And if you want, I can give some other styling as well. Let's suppose font weight. Yeah, font weight as bold. So all the elements have been converted into font weight bold. So that is what a universal selector does. It takes a particular style and applies on all the elements of our web page, whether it's a para or div or whatever. So that was all about selectors. The selectors is what we can use to style our web page. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you.